6,247 tons. Allow me to take a moment to help you grasp the weight of this number. This is not merely a pile of metal sitting in some warehouse. This represents 200 million ounces of physical silver. To put it more tangibly, this is 1/4 of all the silver that every mine on Earth labored to extract over the past 12 months. Now, picture this scenario. If the United States purchased 25% of the world's oil in a single year, or if China bought up 25% of global wheat, what would the headlines look like? It would trigger global panic, prices would rocket vertically, and diplomatic language would barely mask nations teetering on the brink of conflict. Yet when India quietly absorbed 1/4 of the world's silver output over the past year, how did Wall Street react? Dead silence. When you open a Bloomberg terminal, you discover that silver prices have remained in a suffocatingly narrow trading range for an extended period. Is this eerie calm normal? Absolutely not. It is like the ominous silence when the ocean recedes dramatically before a tsunami strikes. Is this merely a routine, technical adjustment, or simply Indians purchasing more jewelry for Diwali? If you only examine the surface, you might nod in agreement. But if you pull up the London Bullion Market Association, SLBMA inventory flow logs, you witness a chilling reality. Western vaults are being emptied, and this is only the beginning. Welcome to the most secretive corner of the global financial system. Here, we're not reviewing metals, we're re-witnessing the silent implosion of a monetary system. Let us first shatter the most comforting lie. Whenever massive precious metal inflows appear in Asia, Western analysts habitually trot out an antiquated explanatory model. It is culturally driven. Indians love silver anklets. Chinese love gold bracelets. They attempt to explain this phenomenon through festival demand, implying it is seasonal, emotional, and unsustainable consumer impulse. But is this time the same? Can this explanation still hold water? Clearly not. If you carefully trace where these 6,000 plus tons of silver ultimately ended up, you'll find they have indeed all been transformed into exquisite crafts in Surat, as bazaars. So where did they go? They've been cast into conductive paste for photovoltaic panels, embedded in relays for new energy vehicles, and soldered onto circuit boards for 5G base stations. This represents a structural transformation overlooked by most macro strategists. India is undergoing a national-scale industrial great leap forward. The Modi government's Make in India is not merely a slogan. It is a voracious consumption of infrastructure. You need to understand silver's dual nature. It is not only the poor man's gold monetary attribute, but also the oil of the electronic age, industrial attribute. Silver is the most electrically conductive metal at room temperature, bar none. In a world pursuing green energy and digitalization, you can print unlimited dollars, but you cannot print an ounce of conductivity. Therefore, when India imports this 25% of global production, this isn't merely wealth storage. It is strategic resource stockpiling. Why is the timing of this event so coincidental? Look at the global timeline. The explosive growth in global photovoltaic installation capacity has collided perfectly with the implementation of India's manufacturing subsidy policies. This has created a perfect storm. This is no longer scattered retail purchases at counters. This is the deep breath of an industrial behemoth awakening. And what is terrifying is that the world's other industrial nations, China, Germany, Japan, haven't even begun competing at full force. When only India is feasting at the table, the plate is already 1/4 empty. What happens when others join the table? This leads to the question most puzzling to investors, given such astonishing demand, even reaching predatory levels. Why hasn't silver price launched like a rocket? According to elementary economics of supply and demand curves, prices should have lost control long ago. Yet over the past year, we've witnessed tepid movements and occasional crashes. Has the market failed? Yes, and failed utterly. To understand this, we must dissect modern financial markets. Greatest magic trick, derivative pricing power. In London, Alabama, and New York, traders exchange hundreds of millions of ounces of silver daily. But note carefully, the vast majority is paper silver, futures contracts, options, numerical promises in bank ledgers. In this virtual casino, behind every 1 ounce of physical silver, there may be 100 ounces or more of paper contracts. What does this mean? It means prices aren't determined by who bought physical, but by who is trading contracts, as long as Western bullion banks can suppress prices by issuing unlimited paper contracts to increase supply. The game continues. They're replaying an endless game of musical chairs, as long as the music doesn't stop, as long as nobody actually demands delivery of those heavy silver bars. This game can continue indefinitely. But India did something this time that makes the house extremely uncomfortable. They didn't purchase ETFs, didn't buy futures contracts, didn't open anonymous accounts in London. They hired cargo ships, crossed half the globe, and physically moved 6,000 tons of metal from vaults in London and Zurich. This is an extremely dangerous signal. This data might seem insignificant, but does this mean the crisis is averted? Quite the contrary. This is merely inventory reduction. This is permanent loss of registered stock. Once these silver bars enter Indian customs and are cast into industrial components or enter private vaults, they effectively disappear from the global financial circulation pool. They can no longer support London as massive paper leverage. It is as if a long queue formed at the bank SATM, and someone withdrew 1/4 of the vault as cash in a single transaction. Although the numbers on screen still flicker, the managers behind the counter have begun to sweat. If we elevate our perspective and survey global capital flows, we witness a spectacular, yet horrifying picture. One of the largest physical wealth transfers in human history is occurring. This isn't just silver moving. This is the foundation of pricing power moving. For decades, the West has controlled pricing power through LBMA and COMEX because they possess the largest inventories. Inventory equals power. If you own the warehouse, you can release inventory during shortages to stabilize prices. But now, if you carefully examine LBMA as public data, though they always try to make it obscure, you find inventory levels approaching historic warning lines. The silent exodus. This is my definition of the current situation. Why is Wall Street choosing silence at this moment? They truly see the risk? Of course they do. This is strategic silence. When inventory drops rapidly, any public panic would trigger instant bank runs. So Western mainstream media downplays this, attributing it to Indian traditional customs. They rebuying time. Buying time for what? Time to untangle complex derivative positions before complete default. But this hasn't stopped physical outflows. The departure of these 6,247 tons of silver means the Western financial system has lost an enormous buffer. When the next black swan event erupts, whether geopolitical conflict or supply chain disruption, London will no longer have sufficient physical metal to meet delivery requirements. What does this mean for ordinary investors' wallets? This isn't merely about whether you hold silver ETFs. This is a grand narrative about the decoupling of physical assets from financial assets. When India chooses to hold physical rather than dollar reserves, this casts a massive vote of no confidence in the existing fiat currency system. The essence of inflation isn't merely rising prices. It is the collapse of monetary credit. When you see a nation exchanging paper currency for physical goods at any cost, you should understand the subtext. They believe paper currency may not buy anything in the future. If you are an ordinary saver, the purchasing power of your currency is being quietly diluted by this global physical hoarding war. When true scarcity emerges, the numbers in your account may be merely an illusion. Let us return to that most perplexing question. Why now? We've discussed the grand narrative of the photovoltaic industry, but this is only half the story. The other half is hidden in a seemingly tedious trade agreement. And this represents Wall Street elites' greatest miscalculation. Why is the timing of this event so coincidental? The answer is 4 letters: CPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. This is a free trade agreement India signed with the United Arab Emirates, UAE, in 2022. Hidden in this document is an inconspicuous clause. India dramatically reduced tariffs on silver imports through the UAE. This is like carving a tiny crack in a dam. Initially, the water flow is small, but shrewd global traders, the true arbitrage hunters, quickly smelled blood. They discovered that by transiting through Dubai, they could transport silver bars from London and Zurich into India at costs far below international market prices. Thus, the Dubai loophole was activated. This is perfect regulatory arbitrage. While London traders still stare at COMEX technical charts drinking coffee, cargo ships loaded with silver bars continuously sail toward Dubai, change labels, then head straight to Mumbai. This explains why the data is so astonishing. This isn't merely demand-driven, but policy loophole-driven plunder. Regulators know the consequences of doing this. This touches on policymakers' impossible trinity. The Modi government needs cheap silver to subsidize domestic photovoltaic manufacturing through the production linked incentive ply scheme. If they close this loophole, India's energy transition costs will skyrocket. If they don't, they effectively draining global silver liquidity. This isn't merely trade. This is an open conspiracy to compete for next generation energy dominance. Now the situation becomes very interesting. India is buying physical, so who is selling? More importantly, who is shorting? If you open the U.S. Commodity Futures Trading Commission, SCFTC Commitment of Traders, COT report, ULL see a long-standing anomaly. Several major bullion banks consistently hold astonishing net short positions in silver. For years, these banks have played the role of market makers. Their logic is simple. Silver has mining costs and stable production. If prices rise too high, dump paper contracts, paper silver to smash prices down. If they fall too deep, cover and buy back. They've profited handsomely from this volatility range. This model has operated for 40 years without failure, because in the past, nobody actually wanted to ship those thousands of tons of silver home. For hedge funds and retail investors, silver was merely a code on screens, Zagist. But this time, the counterparty has changed. Sitting across the table is no longer a speculator seeking 20% gains, but a sovereign nation with rigid physical demand. Before this enormous vacuum cleaner who is swimming naked. Precisely these banks holding massive short positions. Imagine if your book sell clients 100 million ounces of silver you originally planned to deliver from inventory or hoped to buy back after prices dropped. But suddenly, inventory was bought up by India, and there are no new sellers in the market. What do? Your only option is buy to cover at any cost. This is currently the market's most terrifying script, short squeeze. But this isn't just a GME GameStop scenario of retail investors squeezing Wall Street. This is systemic default risk caused by physical depletion. Once London vaults declare force majeure and cannot deliver, paper silver prices will instantly collapse to zero, while physical silver prices will be immeasurable. When you hear silver hoarding, seasoned investors might immediately recall the Hunt brothers of 1980. Back then, these two Texas oil tycoons attempted to monopolize the global silver market through high leverage, once pushing silver prices to $50. The outcome is well known. Regulators changed rules prohibiting new positions. Banks cut credit. The Hunt brothers instantly went bankrupt. Silver prices collapsed. Is history rhyming? Yes, but this time the melody is completely different. Difference 1, leverage versus cash. The Hunt brothers borrowed money to buy silver. Just raising margin requirements could kill them. Today, Indian importers and industrialists use actual trade surplus settlements. You cannot force a buyer who has already shipped goods home to sell through margin calls. Difference 2, speculation versus consumption. The Hunt brothers bought silver to hoard for appreciation. The bars remained in warehouses. India buys silver to consume. This silver is made into silver paste, coated on photovoltaic panels, installed in Rajasthan's deserts, generating electricity. This silver will never return to the market. This is the most spine-chilling difference. The Hunt brothers only temporarily locked liquidity, while India is conducting permanent de-stocking. Every ounce consumed in industry is a permanent deduction from global stock. Finally, we must elevate our perspective to the geopolitical level. In an era of BRICS expansion and increasingly vocal de-dollarization is India. As frenzied hoarding of physical assets merely coincidence? Is this merely commercial behavior without national will? If you examine China hoarding gold, India hoarding silver, Russia hoarding energy, you see a clear picture. Global South nations are abandoning Western credit assets and embracing hard assets. They realize that in future global competition, those with pricing power won, to be those who print money, but those who control energy, food, and critical metals. Silver, as the only metal connecting currency and energy, is precisely the vital point of this contest. India is using concrete actions to tell the world, you can print dollars at will, but you cannot print the conductive silver paste photovoltaic panels need. When 6,000 tons of silver leaves London vaults, this isn't merely a trade deficit. This is the cornerstone of Western financial capitalism, fractional reserve system, suffering a brutal defeat before physical hard assets. When those 6,000 tons of silver disappear like ghosts into Mumbai vaults and Gujarat factories, global supply chain fault tolerance has dropped to zero. In the next 72 hours, which indicator should we watch? Most people will watch that jumping spot price on screens. Even if it is wrong, don't watch it. At this stage, spot price is a highly distorted signal. It is past tense. If you want to be one step ahead of the market, you must watch these two true canaries, predicting system collapse, the Shanghai-London premium. This is the weather vane of global metal flows. If Shanghai Gold Exchange CH silver prices exceed London LBEMA by 5% or even 10%, it means the Eastern vacuum pump is running at full power. Arbitrageurs will frantically buy delivery from London and ship east. When this premium suddenly expands, it is the moment the dam bursts. Silver lease rates. This is currently the most overlooked indicator, when physical is extremely scarce. Those with spot 1, T-lend silver, or demand extremely high interest. If lease rates suddenly spike vertically, or even backwardation occurs, the market is screaming, I need silver now, whatever the cost. If some Friday afternoon in the future, you see lease rates jump and LBMA announces technical adjustment of delivery time, that is the whistle, starting the endgame. Under this macro narrative, how should an ordinary middle-class investor position themselves? Is now the time to hold cash, or should we embrace physical? This is a brutal question. Let us dismantle it with extremely calm logic. If you hold fiat currency, you are actually holding government debt. In an era when this debt is destined to be diluted by inflation, cash is like an ice block under summer sun. It looks solid, but melts every second. But is blindly rushing into gold shops correct? Here is a critically important distinction. This is where countless middle class will be harvested if you buy paper silver, such as some banks account precious metals or ETFs without physical redemption mechanisms. You may be in the most dangerous position. Why? Paper contract quantities far exceed physical inventory. Once a run occurs, exchanges and fund companies typically have an exemption clause, cash settlement. What does this mean? It means when silver prices fly to the moon due to shortage, they forcibly close your position, stuff you with a pile of depreciating paper currency, then tell you, sorry, we don't have silver for you. You won the numbers but lost the wealth. Therefore, the true hedging logic has only one rule. If you don't hold it, you don't own it. For ordinary people, this isn't about investment. It is about insurance. You don't buy car insurance to profit from crashes, but to prevent total loss. In this turbulent cycle, owning a small portion of physical assets with no counterparty risk is your only shield against global central bank printing presses running wild. What is the endgame of all this? When we extend the timeline to the next 3 to 5 years, we witness a painful but inevitable return to value. Over the past 40 years, the global economy has been dominated by financialization. Wall Street could arbitrarily define commodity prices with derivatives, but the laws of physics cannot be violated. When Indian photovoltaic factories stop due to silver shortage, when Tesla relays cannot be delivered due to silver shortage, when 5G base stations cannot network due to silver shortage, prices will no longer be determined by Wall Street charts, but by factory purchasing managers desperately needing raw materials. At that time, silver will tear off its speculative commodity mask, revealing its strategic resource. FANGs, we see the silver. 2. Gold ratio drop from the current 80-to-1 back to geological reserve proportions. This means silver, as purchasing power, will undergo explosive revaluation. But this is merely silver, S story. The migration of these 6,000 tons of silver is a grand metaphor. It marks the return of the physical era. The future world belongs to those nations and individuals who own mines, own energy, own farmland, own factories. Those who merely possess complex financial models and currency printing rights will discover their magic is failing.